Okay, hello and welcome to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. I'm Anthony Pyne and I'm very happy to be joined by Paul Corry and Graham Gartland to reflect on another eventful week on the domestic front. We'll pick through the bones of the European drama and look back on a weekend of FAI Cup action, which threw up its fair share of twists and turns. Plus, we'll have a chat about the Republic of Ireland women's team, who had a really positive few days and learned who they will face in the autumn's Euro 2025 playoffs. But first, where do we start? I guess we're going to start right with Shamrock Rovers. Look, of the two games that they had this week, I think the cold reality of it, if they had to pick one to come through, would be that European tie against Vikingur of Reykjavik. Kick of a ball away from going to extra time, but Nicola Hansen missed his penalty. And that is a result for them progressing to the next round of the Champions League qualification qualifiers that guarantees the club over 1.7 million euro in European prize money, which is obviously not insignificant. But like, where do you land on them, Graham, after the few days? Because obviously it was soured by Friday night's loss to Bohemians in the FAI Cup.
Yeah, the highs and lows of football, especially losing the derby in the FAI Cup, the first round, which, judging by the league form, they probably would have hoped that they went on a bigger run in that and maybe got to a final. I think the league might be a little bit out of reach for them at the moment. When you consider, like, I just don't see Shell stopping at the moment. So I thought they would have likened look, every team would like to get to a cup final. That they're brilliant days. I would have thought that Rovers would have had an eye on that. But to get through on the Tuesday would be financially more rewarding for the football club. And like you said, they're due 1.7. I think it's 7 feet. It works out for so many games. I think they have a chance that could be favourable to try and get into the Conference League again. That those teams from Andorra in there and Bosnia and stuff like that, they in a one-off leg, in terms of like the over the course of the two games, you'd have to fancy beating them. I think you're going to have to do that if you are to get into the Conference League, that you might have to win a tight game. This was a game that gave them a chance to do that. With Jack Bourne getting sent off, they were probably on the ropes with the last 10-15 minutes, and then the penalty comes. That you want the foul just before. The ref in the last 10 minutes was sort of trying to just let the game flow a little bit, and he probably let it go too much. There was a couple of fouls where you could tell Rovers are waiting for them, but that doesn't mean they're not fouls. I'm thinking of one of Sean Horn in the corner, and then 2 or 3 minutes later he gives the penalty. I was at the game. My two boys were at it. The whole place erupted, and that sense of relief that was probably just flowed through everybody, and it was a fantastic night from that sense. And then they just come back down there for a bump on Friday. So yeah, it's the highs and lows of football. They were to see the team in the group. They did get knocked out to a team from Iceland last year, so to get over this one was a great achievement for the club to get them into the next round. And I know everyone will remember the fact that he missed the penalty, but look, they're in the next round, and that's what matters. But they're not in the next round of the FAI Cup, so it is contrast and emotions. But what a night, and that sense of relief that went around the stadium. Like, my own kids were jumping up and down, and that, like, there was tears in the stand. It was a magical night in football terms. But Paul could touch on then what happens in Dalymount on Friday. I don't know if it's hangover from it. I don't know if the players, but if people turn around, we played European games once. Specifically remember this one game. We had a really big night on a Wednesday or Thursday. We went to UCD on a Sunday in the old Belfield, and the place was dead and no atmosphere at it. And you're thinking, and what a come down that is, from a European night to probably 250 people at the game. But to go from a massive European like that on Tuesday night straight into a derby, it's probably a game you would fancy, because it's a sellout. You're thinking, right, I can get straight back up for this. But I don't know how the game would have went. I seen the highlights of it, but Paul would have a better idea of the flow of it and whether Bows deserved to win it or not.
Yeah, well, to talk us through it then, Paul. I mean, we should give Bowes credit here too, because they have, Dawson Devoy is back in that team, straight into the side. Ross Tierney is back in that team. So, we will talk about Bowes, but what happened, Shamrock Rovers? Was it, as Graham says, just a case where they were flat, they couldn't sort of get themselves up? As big a fixture as it is, that there was a bit of a hangover from that European game.
Yeah, it felt that way, but it's not the first time I've watched Rovers this season and thought they've actually looked a little flat, particularly in possession of the ball. Um, Johnny Kenny obviously didn't play the other night. Neil Ferrugia came off the bench. Darragh Burns didn't play. And I think when you take those individuals out of the Shamrock Rovers team and you take away sort of that pace and those legs in wide areas, they do look a little stale and a little predictable when they're trying to play through teams. And yes, you can take into consideration the fact that they played in Europe during the week, and mentally that must have been such a huge toll on the squad and such a massive relief to get through. But if you just look at the Bowes game in isolation, the performance was flat. And I think Stephen Bradley was pretty honest in his comments after the game. Wasn't a huge amount between the teams with regards to kind of number of chances, but I just thought with what they did with the ball, they did very little. Jack Byrne has put a great ball in, probably first 5-10 minutes, comes off the post. Cleary should score the rebound, but outside of that, not a huge amount of chances created. And you kind of leave the ground on Friday and you look at some of the individuals in that team and you wonder, how many top performances have they got out of individuals this season? It's hard to say that they've got too many. And I'm sure Stephen Bradley is maybe looking at the mix and the blend that he has in his squad and maybe wondering what his best 11 is, because they haven't hit those same heights that they have done in previous years. They certainly looked better. I'll admit that they looked much better when Johnny Kenny came on. Trevor Clark, Darragh Burns, and Neil Ferrugia, and Dylan Watson in the middle of the park. There seemed to be a lot more balance to their play, and maybe that's more in line with the team that you'll see in Europe next week. But to go to Graham's point, like, I'm sure the cup was something that Bradley was looking at and really wanted to go deep in this year, because for all the domination they've had in the league, they probably haven't hit the same heights or reached as many FAI Cup finals as they would have wanted in previous years. And some of that is down to their own success with just the amount of games that they've had to play. But I'm sure going to Dalymount on Friday, they were very much focusing on getting into the next round and maybe not too focused about what lies ahead this week. So yeah, it's been disappointing. It's probably been consistent, Anthony, what we've seen in the league. Like, in my mind, there's absolutely no chance Rovers will catch either Derry or Shells, irrespective of what Shells and Derry do between now and the end of the season. I just don't think Shamrock Rovers are playing well enough, and they're not doing it consistently enough for me to warrant any sort of title challenge or comeback to compete with those two sides. So yeah, it does leave yourself scratching your head a bit, I think, particularly for a lot of Shamrock Rovers fans, and maybe you would wonder what the makeup of that squad is going to look like next season, because some of the players for me are starting to look a little leggy. And it might be time to freshen up elements of that squad.
What about Bowles then, Paul? I mean, is this now the relaunch they needed? It was a massive game for them. It really was, because their league campaign has drifted. I mean, they really, their focus now has to be just getting away from Dundalk, I suppose. I know they have a couple of games in hand, but they have brought in bodies, in the last few weeks. How did they look? What did you make of them? Did you see anything that would suggest that they can kick on and have a strong second half to the campaign?
Yeah, you definitely could. And I thought going into Dalymount on Friday night that this was actually a more important game for Bowes than it was for Rovers, simply because Rovers have that European campaign that they can focus on. Bowes and their league form, it's just about consolidation at this point. So a good cup run would really galvanise everybody down in Dalymount Park. And I really don't think you can underestimate the impact that Tierney and Dawson Devoy are going to have on this squad. It's amazing what one or two players can do for the bodies around them. And the two players on Friday were absolutely superb. Dawson Devoy is so good at just keeping the game ticking over. He's always available for the ball off the back four. And what he does so well for me, and what I love to see in centre midfield players, is he plays forward. He breaks through lines and he gets the front players on the front foot and into pockets of space, which maybe they've been lacking in recent weeks, where maybe it's just been a little bit sideways and backwards. He really gets them playing forward. And then Ross Tierney, he's probably not too different to the player that we saw go away initially. Like, his energy is so infectious with and without the ball. He picks up great pockets that the likes of Dawson Devoy can pick him out with. He's great at getting on the half turn, and he's got great legs and great pace to get at back fours. And then also when he hasn't got the ball, he's just so infectious with his energy to win it back. And he was really the difference when it boils down to it, because he does brilliant. Dale Rooney comes off the right hand side and plays a brilliant reverse ball, but Ross is so clever. Like he runs the wrong side of Honohan and just waits for the contact, slows down, and the minute he feels it, he goes down and he wins the penalty. And that was just a moment that separated the two sides. But I think when you kind of review the 90 minutes, Bows did more for me. They did much more going forward, and I think they actually deserve to go through to the next round. And if Rennie can find more performances like that from that Bows team, there shouldn't be any problems, because they should pick up a lot more points between now and the end of the season. Martin Miller and Dale Rooney down that right-hand side were excellent. The back four looked a little more solid. There was a few shaky moments, but certainly looked a little more solid. And if they could just knit things together a little more in the final third, you could see Bows progressing a lot in the next few weeks. There's still probably a question mark about how efficient they are in that final third. Like they don't really look like they have that number 9 who's going to get you a lot of goals. It was a set piece that won them the game on Friday, but it's certainly heading in the right direction, Anthony. Much more like
trying to get Keane, is there, Paul?
Yeah, and that'll be massive for them, Garts, wouldn't it?
Yeah, massive. That's what saying, yeah.
Goals, top end of the pitch, somebody who knows the league. But the two lads who came into the squad, no Tierney had played the week before. Like Dawson would have had a long off season and probably not played a huge amount of football in recent weeks and months. He was excellent, and it was much more like it from Bows, and you could feel that around the ground when they went through.
Just before we move on, Graham, a quick look ahead to Sparta Prague this week. It's a big ask, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a big ask. They won the double last year. The new manager, the previous manager went and became the Feyenoord manager. So the assistant, Lars Frist, has taken over. I've done a bit of work. They've 2 Czech players that were at the Euros. I'm not sure how much they might play because it's a quick turnaround. Biraman Sevic is probably their main player. He got the player of the year last year, and he got 16 goals. They have a lad from Albania who was at the Euros as well. They brought in a guy on loan, a centre back on loan from Galatasaray, and a full back on loan from Club Athletic. He played like a 3-4-3 system, similar shape to what Rovers played, but similar to what Paul said. They're going to need on a one-off game. This Rovers team, with all the experience, will have a go at anybody. Will have a chance to stay in the game. But over 2 legs, I just can't see them competing with Sparta Prague. They just haven't showed enough form, consistent form this season to do that. And they're up against a serious outfit here that, like they got to the last 16 of the Europa League last season. It was actually Liverpool that knocked them out. But coming out of their group, they put Galatasaray out of the group stages. So it's a really big ask. But like you said, I think this pushes them into a different bracket where you go into a Europa Conference League playoff, and then that's more akin to the teams around them that they should be maybe beaten or have a chance to beat over 2 legs. So that's why this route and this Champions route is so beneficial for teams, that the winner of it gets a chance. Like you could play 3 games, lose 1 to a big team, go toe-to-toe with a team that's similar level to you, and before you know, you end up in the group stages. And then your financial rewards for that are excellent. They will get extra financial awards from Sinclair and Armstrong moving as well. That's another 700k. A really good deal done by the club at the time. I think Shane Robinson was a big part in making sure that was done. Sinclair just wanted to go and play football, and they'd done a really good deal with QPR to make sure that was beneficial for the player and the club further down the line if he was successful. So they didn't stand in his way, and I know Cherry Orchard will get a bit of a kickback. Hopefully they got a kickback as well. But yeah, I think Sparta Prague will have too much for them. When you look at their pedigree, it's going to be a tough 2 legs for Shamrock Rovers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Huge pedigree. That's one thing, losing to Sparta Prague, but to lose to Bruno's Magpies, with all due respect, is that's one that does hurt you, and that's what happened. Derry City, in fairness to them, on Sunday they bounced back. They swept past St. Pat's, and we'll talk about St. Pat's in a little bit. But first, we'll start with Derry, Graham. how difficult is that to swallow to lose a tie like that? Because they would have fancied it. They were expected to come through it. They didn't. I suppose yesterday probably showed how much they've been hurting all week. And the one thing you want is the chance to put it right, which they did in fairness. But it was a bad one, wasn't it? That loss to.
Yeah, I think when you think you're losing to a team from Gibraltar who are obviously they're starting to, they're part-time, but they're starting to try and grow their league. And their league would we consider a little bit more established than theirs. To go and lose to a team from there is tough. The sympathy I have for Derry, and it's a small bit, the FAI Cup is on up in Derry. When people talk about infrastructure, and I'm not talking out of pocket here, we talk about infrastructure in this league. The FAI Cup is on in Derry, which is a youth tournament for all football clubs. Derry had no place to train. We're scrambling around for training ground. And that's where you're saying, has the league progressed? That's where it still hasn't. They haven't been able to train at their own ground because the FAI Cup is on, the training pitch beside it. So that, from that point of view, Rory Higgins must have been so frustrated going into this, knowing that this is a potential slip up, and we're not in it. We're not prepared as best we can for it, and it was probably evident in that. That's no excuse. They still should come through it. I still think they're short. I still think they need pace in the back line at times, Derry. I think it catches them out. I think they struggle when they play higher up the pitch, and then any movement down the side of the centre back catches them out. So I think he needs reinforcements in that. They did bounce back, and they bounced back emphatically well yesterday. I watched a good bit of that game. But from the league as a whole, it is disappointing to be losing to teams from Gibraltar when we're talking about the growth in the league, the impact that other teams have made in getting to group stages, Dundalk twice, Rovers getting to the Europa Conference group stages, and how the roof for teams that are in Europe is a little bit easier than it was previously. So we should be making more of an impact in that as a league. And that's where I think Derry be really, really disappointed that they haven't come through that. They had a go, they're down to 10 men. A couple of decisions probably were a bit harsh. But look, they went out trying, but ultimately they shouldn't be going out to a team from Gibraltar.
Let's have a chat about Pats then, Paul, because that is a damaging feat for them too yesterday. And I mean, they haven't really seemed to got a bounce from Stephen Kenny. Now he's a 5-year deal. He's got time. I'm sure he's probably taken this time to fully assess that squad. But at the moment, you'd have to say he's probably not been enormously impressed with what he's seen and what he's witnessed in the last few weeks. They were poor yesterday.
They were really poor, and yes, they had chances in the first half where maybe they could go ahead, but to concede 3 goals in the space of 15 minutes is just a bit naive, and actually it's not acceptable from a St. Pat's point of view, because some of the goals were so easy, and they didn't seem to be able to get the grips with particularly Michael Duffy down that left-hand side, and he was instrumental with the first goal, and then he took his own goal really well, but the nature of the goals that they gave away, I'm sure, would just be so disappointing for Stephen Kenny. And it's kind of been the story of Pats' season throughout, where they've just been, consistently inconsistent. Some of the performances, if you think back to the one against Shamrock Rovers at Richmond Park, really strong, really good performance. You feel like, okay, maybe there's a bit of momentum there, and maybe there's something that you could build upon. And then they throw out a couple of clangers in recent weeks, and you're kind of back to square one. So it's hard to know where they sit. And similar to what I said about Bows, it felt like Pats really needed a cup run to galvanise the squad and galvanise everybody down at Richmond Park. But the signings have, should bolster them in the next couple of weeks. I think Elbazetti coming in is definitely somebody that they can get excited about. He was brilliant for Stephen Kenny when he played for the 21s. You think about him on one side, Mulroney on the other. Chris Forrester going forward. They've plenty of attacking threats, but they gotta iron out, conceding sloppy goals, Anthony. Because as much as you're in games, if you start to concede really easy goals, it just zaps the energy away from you, and can really impact the confidence of the squad. And that was very evident yesterday, that when they went one behind, they kind of just folded like a deck of cards and conceded 2 and 3 really quickly. So that is worrying. They certainly need to find more consistent performance, and need to start to grind out results and stop becoming a bit of a pushover once they go behind. And I'm sure Stephen will get that right. Certainly got a number of players in there that would fit the mold of how he wants to play, but it needs to be a more solid foundation that they're building from.
Like, you thought they would have got the boost after the penalty save. You thought, oof, they got away with one here. And then, like Paul said, down that left-hand side, Doherty backing up. Duffy was excellent as well. I agree with what Paul's saying, but they probably need... I looked at it yesterday and they had Kavanagh beside Lennon with Forrester, and you're going to Derry, and I'm thinking you might need an extra midfield. You might need an extra sort of defensive midfielder sitting in there beside Lennon and saying, look, just stay in the game, because like that, when the game went 1-0 and it just got away from them so quick, it looked like they were so easy to play through that it was like there was no one screening the back line. They were going straight into the front men. It was getting set back, and then it was just runners from either side, and it was coming back to the midfielders, and they were just popping it for Duffy to run, and like that, just that extra midfielder to play in beside Lennon sometimes, just to give them that defensive cover, that when they can screen the front players, and then that stops the supply in, and then the runners don't get as much free time then, or the midfielders aren't get as much time to pick out them passes for the runners. But yeah, I thought that after the penalty save, I thought they got away one here, but like that, they didn't lay a glove on Derry then after that.
Well, Pats are up in Europe this week against FC Vaduz. Vaduz, I hope I'm pronouncing that correct.
FC Vaduz, yeah, they play in Switzerland, but they're from Liechtenstein.
Yeah, they compete in the Swiss second division.
Yeah.
So they qualify for Europe through the Liechtenstein Cup, which they won, but they win that pretty much every year. They've won it 24 the last 25 times. So in other words, they're in Europe, Graham, most years. They're well seasoned, but should we be expecting St. Pat's to win that tie over 2 legs?
Well, we went there in 2004 with Longford, would you believe? I actually turned 21 over there. Feels like a long time ago now. I was injured. I just had a groin operation, so I went over we were part-time, so I was able to travel and do a lot of rehab. It's unbelievable, like, lovely part of the world, gorgeous, like, but what we found was we played them over the 2 legs. They beat us 1-0 out there. They were very strong, like a bit of a Scandinavian feel to them, in that very robust, very rigid. Played 4-4-2 at the time. Didn't do much, sort of, weren't over elaborate in their play, but were just physically able to handle and be done. And then they came back to Longford, and this was obviously the away goals were in as well. And I think they beat us. I think it might have been 2-1, and ended up being 3-2 on, or it might have been 2-2 or something, or 3-2. I think, like I said, I wasn't playing in the game. But I just remember the physicality of them, that they were well able, and at the time Longford would have been one of the more physical teams in the league back then. We had won the cup in 2003, and then actually went on to win the cup again in 2004. So it wasn't like we were no mugs, like. So I wouldn't underestimate them. Like, I know, Pat, people think, oh, they're Liechtenstein. They don't play in Liechtenstein. They play in the Swiss first division. They finished 3rd last year. They go back to Liechtenstein, win the cup, guarantee them Europe, but they have the resources and finances. They have a decent enough stadium where when we played, one side of it was done, but it's a lovely facility. But yeah, I wouldn't underestimate, and with the way Pats are playing and the form they're in, I don't think they can take anybody lightly. I think they have to go and really set out their stall and try and stay as compact as they can, play a little bit on the counter-attack, use the pace of Jake Mulroney. I feel sorry for Mason Melia a little bit, because I think for a 16-year-old to be trying to lead the line constantly, he probably needs a little break. But if you do give him a break, who goes in and replaces him? Because we all know, we've all been young players where you go in, do really well, but you need that little moment to just come out a little bit, reset again, have a look at what we're doing, have more conversations around coaching and what we're looking for, get a chance to do it. But it's like he's playing every week and they're so reliant on him, and I feel that he probably needs a little bit of a break as well. So it might be that they just go with Mulroney and use his pace to try and hurt them, similar to what John Kenny done in the game for Shamrock Rovers.
I think the fact that the first game's at home, Anthony, like, they probably need to take a lead over there. Yeah. Just something to protect. And if they get it right, they certainly have the players there to hurt opposition in Europe.
Okay, let's move swiftly along then to Shelbourne, who are the one club who've had I suppose, unblemished week in that they got through a really bruising game against St. Joseph's, but they got through, and then they dug out a 1-0 win at Bray on Sunday. You think, Paul, job done, and we all move on. They have FC Zurich now this week, which is a hugely difficult game for them. They're in the top flight in Switzerland. But Damien Duff, the man does not do boring post-match interviews. He wasn't happy. He used the word arrogant quite a lot. He wasn't happy with the application of the players. Is he right to sort of is he just giving them a little kick up the backside, or do you think he genuinely was unhappy with how they turned up at Bray on Sunday?
It was probably a bit of both, to be honest with you. I'm sure he just wants to ensure that standards remain high between now and the end of the season, because they're going to have so many important games coming up. And yeah, maybe they took the foot off the pedal against Bray, but I think when maybe he reflects on this in a day or so, he might just think, okay, it's brilliant that we've gotten into the next round of the Cup, and over the course of those 4 or 5 days, they've managed to get through a round in Europe and obviously beat Bray and progress through. So that's really important for them. But I'm sure when he's looking at the bigger picture and thinking of the games that they have coming up, particularly in the league, and as they go deeper into the FAI Cup, he's probably thinking that they can't repeat performances like that and expect to get points or to get through. So it's probably just a reminder to the squad that he won't settle for that. And if they are to be successful, they will need to hit the heights that they have done earlier on in this league campaign. But it's a really exciting time for Shells now. To progress through, like you look at the likes of Shamrock Rovers who've dropped out of the Cup off after a European game. Yes, Shells had an easier draw, but they're progressing on all fronts. And how they set up is probably ideal as well for European games, where they're happy enough to sit in, be difficult to beat, really well organised, and then try utilize some of the pace that they have at the top end of the pitch. So yeah, I can completely understand his frustration and maybe the drop off in performance that he's seen, but to get through, I still think is very important, irrespective of who it is they were playing off the back of that game in Europe. And yeah, this is going to be a really stiff test when they head to Zurich during the week, because we mentioned about the opposition that Pats are facing. Like Zurich are in the top division in Switzerland. It's a really competitive league. Like when you look at the names of the sides there and how they've progressed in European competitions in recent years, this is going to be very, very difficult. But one that I'm sure Shells and the players will be really looking forward to, just the confidence that they must have in grinding out results in recent weeks.
And these are the games, Graham, that Shelbourne fans, might have feared were never going to come around again. We saw the celebrations against St. Joseph's at the end at the final whistle, but to go to Zurich now and take a swing at them, I mean, it is great, isn't it?
It is exactly in the whole Safe Talker Park, and they're going to try and revamp that. And Damien's just bled so much life into it, and he's been back so well, even in the off season with the owners coming in and then the change, making sure that Damien stayed. Then they've got new investment in through the tech firm. You just know, he knows that the certain games that are going to come up, that they have to have a consistency and an honesty of effort, and he's just demanding that all the time and treat every game properly. But they're not at a stage where that effort and that honesty isn't there, but they can still maybe have a moment of magic. That's what he's worried about. They're not going to be there yet in a Premier Division game like that. So obviously against Bray, he says they hung on. But he knows that the 2nd of August they've a massive game against Derry. So he's trying to give them he's firing a warning shot to say, look, if you think you can take it easy and float into these games, that's not going to happen. And like you said, you don't want to turn around and say, oh, like the FC Zurich, go and enjoy it. That's not the way Damien's thinking. He's thinking it's a test for them to see how far they can go against them and see how long they can go toe-to-toe with them for, or have a game plan around that. Let's see what they're capable of for next year, and to build on it again. And I think that's what it is. You're just measuring yourself against these clubs, see where you need to be, where do we need improvements, and how you can build that going forward for year on year, and make sure that this happens every year for Shells. And I think with Damien and Joey O'Brien especially, they're at the helm of it. I can see more and more of these nights coming every summer for them, because like you said, that consistency and the honesty of effort that Damien wants and demands of himself. He's putting that into his team, and he's done it with players that some people probably didn't. Ali Coote, he took back in, had an inconsistent season at Bows last year. Sam Bowen had just left Dundalk. Paddy Barra had left Pats. Sean Gannon wasn't really playing at Rovers. He's done it with a lot of players that probably weren't fulfilling their own potential at other clubs, and he's put them together here and made them go. And Mark Coyle, another one, was playing with Finn Harps. He's been absolutely fantastic. So all of these players, Cameron Ledgwich came back from Southampton. Connor Kearns was a goalkeeper from Galway. Sean Boyd was up at Finn Harps doing well, but very inconsistent due to injuries. So it's not like he's gone out and just bought the best players in the league. He's developed these and he's put a consistency into them. So when he sees that consistency drop, he's probably thinking, you can't afford to do that. That's what you were like before you got here. So he in that sense, I agree. You just have to keep driving them and getting the most out of them. And it'd be interesting to see how they do against Zurich, but it's a fantastic occasion for the people involved at the club who, like you said, never thought they'd see these times again.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's just have a quick chat about the Louth derby. Draw the United best Dundalk 2-1. Paul, like on these European weeks, we always sort of get this wider debate about the health of the league and the standard of the league. It seems for whatever reason, and I don't want to pick on poor Felix Goddard, who had a bad night at Weavers Park, but the goalkeeping seems to have dipped this season. I don't know, is that just me? But it was his mistakes, particularly the first goal, which ultimately settled that game and gave Drogheda a morale boosting win.
Yeah, it was bizarre, and you could kind of see his teammates looking around when the first goal went in to try comprehend or understand what it is had happened. And I'm not sure if it hits the crossbar and comes back off him, or he just doesn't deal with it. And you would expect in 99% of those situations, you just touch it over the bar, you settle for the corner, and you get set up again. And unfortunately, you know, in games like that, particularly Louth derbies and particularly in the cup, it does come down to moments in tight games, and that was a really poor goal to give away. And the second one is equally as bad as the first one. Like, one straight ball down through the spine of the side, neither centre half or fullback deals with a keeper, seems to be in no man's land, and you find yourself two behind them with 15 minutes to play. And I'm sure when John Daly looks back on it, he'll think it doesn't matter what you do outside of those two instances. When you shoot yourself in the foot like that against any opposition, you're giving yourself an absolute mountain to climb. And it's kind of been unlike Dundalk, because they've actually been decent in recent weeks, and particularly when they've played at Oriel Park, they've kept a huge number of clean sheets. So it'll be a situation of moments that they'll look back on and rue, because it's thrown them out of the cup, and it's very hard to legislate or explain what it is that's going on in both situations, because you would have thought that for the first goal you just deal with and touch over the bar, and the second one between your back four and your goalkeeper, you either start deeper and you come onto it, or your keeper tidies up in behind you and you don't get done by one long ball. It's like stuff you'd see in Fairview Park between an under 11s or 12s team. You just can't legislate for that. And it's very disappointing, but it's something maybe that will kind of spruce Drogheda into life and give them a bit of impetus going into recent weeks, because they've needed something. It's gone very flat, and it doesn't seem like they're being able to produce performances or get results. So certainly something that they can build on, but very hard to kind of wrap your head around what has gone wrong for both of those goals.
Yeah, I guess, Graham, Dundalk fans will console themselves by looking at the league table, and that they are 5 points ahead of Drogheda in second to last position. Do you see any way that could flip around? Could you see Drogheda eating into that?
They have to be boosted by this result. I actually thought even the goal Drogheda conceded was a terrible decision from the goalkeeper as well. He came out like he was just got headed over him. And I'm like, for all three of the goals were goalkeeping errors. I do think the standard in goalkeeping has been poor, and it has been declining for a while. I think back to the goalkeepers that played when we started in the league, were all internationals at some stage. Ford, Manus, and going back to Brian Murphy at Bohemians was fantastic. I think he got player of the year 2 years in a row. Dan Connor, ourselves. There's some fantastic goalkeepers, all big units, all able to deal with the ball. And I just see so many goalkeeping errors week on week. And it's something that other people have touched on as well. But I know from even doing recruitment, it's very hard to get goalkeepers. difficult to get centre backs and it's difficult to get centre forwards. They're just not there anymore, and I can see that you can see who the signed. They tried to bring in a striker and they tried to bring in centre backs, and I seen Dundalk done the same. Drogheda need to take sort of some heart from this. Davis does well. They missed him for a while because he got a concussion in the Galway game. He's come back and he's very opportunistic for the second goal. But they do need a little bit more, and they need to find that consistency. But again, their back line sorted, the two centre backs would worry me. I just don't know if they're strong enough or aggressive enough in the box at times. And I think when pressure comes, and we've seen that in the Galway game, they're 2-1 up with 2 minutes to go, and they concede 2 goals. And it just comes down to actually defending your box properly and being set and going and putting your head on things and clearing the danger. I know they were buoyed on, and I was at the funeral of Sarah Murphy, who passed away, a young girl up in Drogheda, and tragically lost her life. She's only 13 years of age. Her uncle was actually a player that would have played at Drogheda and then played at Longford, Alan Murphy. So it was terribly sad news, and Drogheda I think they had a minute silence for her as well going into the games. I know they had one in the other Louth derby as well. So I think it galvanised the whole town and got behind them. So yeah, it was a great victory for them, and it's always nice to win them games. Which game was more important in terms of, I'm sure Drogheda would have liked to get closer to them in the league and make sure that they stayed in the division, but they have to go on some run because Sligo have kicked on now. So it does look like it's going to be between Drogheda and Dundalk. But I think Paul's right. I think Dundalk defensive home record might just see them safe, or see them into the playoff at least. So I do fear for Drogheda. I always thought they might have had enough, but I think they're just running out of games at the moment.
Just briefly on that point, Graham, about dirt and defenders or centre halves, you said they're harder to find out. Is that a wider indication of how young players are being coached? Is there an overemphasis on attacking technical players, or is it just these things happen, the sort of swings around?
You know what? It's a really good question, and I've had conversations with coaches and really good coaches at high levels, and again, it's like, obviously my hero growing up would have been Paul McGrath, so I wanted to be a defender. I just loved it, but we're asking them to do a lot first before we're actually asking to defend, so can you collect the ball, can you play out, can we do all these things? But the art of actually wanting to stop somebody being creative and being a nuisance and being a pest, like being somebody that wants to head it, not being afraid to like be the one that isn't the technical player in the team, so if your fullback's in trouble, give it to me, I'll kick it out play, but I'll kick it out play 30 yards up the pitch, and then you're getting, look at you being that type of player, but your fullback is delighted because it's 30 yards further away from goal, that throw in. So being that defender, being the one that doesn't mind getting the stick. I used to get stick, you can't play or this and that, and I go, I know, but I'll head every ball that comes into the box, or I'll talk to my midfielders up front and give them loads of information. And sometimes, midfielders might get frustrated and go pass the ball into me a bit better, but they're not frustrated when you're heading balls away, or you're coming off with stitches and cuts and we're keeping clean sheets. So I think that emphasis on promoting people to defend and encouraging that, I do think it is missing a little bit, because everybody wants to be like, can we start the game? Can you take it off the goalkeeper and start their play in the sort of ignite the what am I trying to say is take the ball off the goalkeeper and start the play. Can we drive in and break lines? Can we punch the ball? And nearly like the defending stuff of, can you stop your striker getting into the game? Can you defend the box well? Can you communicate well? That's all secondary towards the technical bit of playing with the football. And I do think we miss it. I know there's clubs in France that will just solely work on defending. We've played against them with Shamrock Rovers in a tournament where they say, no, we just produce defenders. And they're happy to do that. But again, certain clubs have certain identities that, no, we have to produce attacking type of players. So I do feel that there needs to be a bit more of an emphasis on it. I don't know what Paul feels on it as a midfielder who could play and collect it, but I guarantee you when the ball came into the box, he's thinking, I wish we centre back had just put his head on one of these. We're winning 1-0 and we need to get over the line. So there's a place for everybody, and that's what makes a team work.
Yeah, and I think it's about balance, right? And it feels like in certain situations when you go out and watch some of the domestic games here, it's gone so far, you know, towards playing out from the back and the keeper playing to centre halves and playing to fullbacks. And if you're being brutally honest about it, that doesn't suit some of the players that are playing in this league, that actually, first and foremost, they want to defend and they want to be aggressive and maybe aren't so comfortable with the ball. And that puts questions in my head of why are you putting them in those situations? Is playing out from the back and trying to draw the opposition onto you, creating so much opportunity at, you know, in midfield or the top end of the pitch? I don't always see that. I actually see that there's a huge amount of goals in our league now scored on transitions from people giving the ball away, and the game and the pitch being made so wide that when oppositions actually take the ball, they've got so much space to run into. So I think, yes, it from a product point of view, possession-based football can maybe be a little easier on the eye, but I think for teams, it's about finding that right balance. There's nothing wrong with actually drawing an opposition onto you and playing a 40-yard ball into your centre forward or turning an opposition. Sometimes I think we're maybe asking players who are not the most technical to be in really pressurized situations to pick out a pass that is so intricate that maybe doesn't lead to a really good opportunity at top end of the pitch. So it is about finding, I think, the right style of play that suits your players while not becoming, you know, Man City or Barcelona trying to play out from the back.
But at youth team level, Paul, we touch on it and go, how are they in the build-up phase? And you're like, well, they're okay. They're brilliant in defending the box, but they're not great in the build-up phase. And then you're losing such an honesty and an effort in players that are willing to put their body on the line and put the team first. Because, oh, well, the build-up phase play isn't great. You're like, oh no, but look what they give you in the offensive third, and what you're sacrificing here. It's the same with the goal. I hear it with goalkeepers. He's really good with his feet. Well, what's he like with his hands? I need him to save the ball as well, you know. And that's where you're like you said, that balance of, well, he's giving me a bit of both, and I can take that. And the best defenders, the ones that stand out, that balance, they've always had a bit of both. You know, you look at Vidic, Ferdinand, one was considered this way, one was a header of the ball. So you're right, it's that balance of who they're playing with. But again, I just feel that honesty in the kids, leave them do it. Like, I know that they're trying to get rid of heading as well at a younger age, and I get that. But that thing of being willing to sacrifice yourself for the team, that has to be rewarded as well at a young age and being promoted too.
Okay, good stuff. I'm just going to rattle through the rest of the cup results over the weekend. On Friday, Waterford bet Cockhill Celtic 2-1. Cockhill took the lead in that game. It gave a good account of themselves. They won the FAI Junior Cup back in May. Kerry had a good win at Cove Ramblers. They won 2-0. Carrigaline United were beaten by Wilton United. That was a non-league Cork derby. Kilbarrack United gave a very good account of themselves as well. They really pushed Trinity United to the pin of their collar. It was 0-0, at Markets Field, but Trinity won that game on penalties. Galway hammered Longford Town 6-0. Athlone won 1-0 against Ringmahon Rangers. Cork City are through. They bet Finn Harps 1-0 at Burners Cross. Pike Rovers got past Middleton in another non-league game. That game was played in Limerick. Ballyfermot United, they're also in the hat. They won 3-1. They got Leeds FC of Cork. UCD were too strong for Corry Rangers in Wexford. They won 4-0. Well, another non-league team, Wayside Celtic, went out. They lost 3-1 to Wexford FC. Sligo Rovers, meanwhile, were 3-0 winners over Munster Senior League outfit Cove Wanderers. Former Cove Ramblers player Wilson Waweru scored a hat-trick for Sligo. So we'll just finish up, Paul, with a little reflection on the Republic of Ireland women's team. They won 3-1 against France at Parc y Cuivre on Tuesday evening. It was a great evening. I was down there. They played well. France made a lot of changes. They changed the whole team. 11 changes. So we should caveat that with that fact, and they'd already qualified for the Euros. But nonetheless, it was a good performance by Ireland. They end the campaign on a high. First of all, did you see anything different about this performance than what's gone before? More goals, more chances created. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I think they've been building towards this, Anthony, and I've covered a number of the games in this group stage, and it maybe felt like, particularly at the beginning of the group, that the squad was maybe a bit overawed by by the situation of playing in the Aviva against the top teams in the world. And yes, I mean, the group that they were drawn was nothing short of impossible to get out of. But I think what we saw as we progressed through that campaign is the performances got better. I thought we started to see a bit more of, say, Eileen Gleeson's stamp on the side of, yes, trying to continue to be really difficult to break down and not lose that solidity that we have at the back that's been so successful for us in recent years, but also try to bring a little bit more to our plays as we go forward. And the Friday evening performance against England was good, and we had spells of possession in that game that you thought, okay, that's something to build on, and that certainly carried itself into the game on Monday night in Park Equive. I thought Denise O'Sullivan over the course of those two games was absolutely brilliant in the middle of the park. A number of other good performances, particularly at the back as well. And when you started to knit it all together and you start to see some of the belief and the confidence coming into that squad, I think where we started that campaign, where we finished it against France, puts the whole team in an incredible position heading into those playoffs. I think if we, once we come through those two-legged game against Georgia and potentially face Wales, I think we're in a brilliant position to qualify again for another competition. And unlike the World Cup, where we're going in and maybe not too sure what it is we could do or what it is we could challenge against the top teams, I think what this qualifying campaign has given us is experience of playing competitive games against the top teams in the world, and also understanding how it is we can, yes, be defensively very solid, but also understand how it is we can break teams down. Some of the goals that were scored last Monday were brilliant. Denise's one where she just gets it out of her feet and into the bottom corner, and then the other goal from open play, lovely with ball into the top corner, and then obviously the last goal from Connolly's set piece was, again, something that we've seen throughout this squad and in different campaigns have been dangerous from those situations. So it puts Eileen in a brilliant position. I think she's got a much clearer understanding of the shape that she wants to play, the players that fit into that system, and then also how we go about breaking down the top teams in women's international football. We haven't really had a problem with kind of beating teams that we should expect that are ranked below us. It's actually now finding that recipe of how we become really competitive against the top teams, and I think we found that now.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, Graham, you're talking about defenders who like to defend. Ireland have loads of those players, this team. They have players who love to defend, they can soak up pressure. One of the things that they was maybe slightly different against France was pace. They had much more pace and energy in the team. And it just seems like, from a defensive point of view, when you have Leanne Kiernan, Julianne Russell, O'Sullivan, Jess Sue, like, just being able to knock the ball down the line and turning the other defenders to face their own goal, it makes such a big difference.
But it's also a platform that that it's okay, that the front players can try things, knowing that safety net is there at the back. You can try that pass, you can risk something, you can risk giving the ball away. I listen to a lot of people talk about football from different podcasts and all these things. One of the things that stood out to me was listening to Trent Alexander talk about Liverpool, where he says we're nearly encouraged to try passes because if they give it away, we're at our best when we're trying to win it back. So if I don't try a pass, they'll say to me, we seen this pass, why didn't you play it? So, but you can, that's easy, that's well, and like you said, that's good when you have Virgil van Dijk behind you now. Well, if we give it away, we're in a good position because they're set up. So you're right, and then the thing you touched on there is pace. In Europe, when you come up against these teams and you come up against things at international level, they play at a higher tempo. So the passes move quicker, the decision making is quicker, their awareness is quicker, and they hurt you quicker, and they spot weaknesses quicker. But then they have the pace to exploit it. When any of the European games we played, the players that made the impact for us were the lads who could run and the lads who had really out and out pace that could really hurt teams. And at any level, and Paul played in Championship would have been like that, where you had players who could run all day and they play Saturday, Tuesday, and then you had players who were pacey and you knew they'll give you a chance to score a goal. So the two things you touched on is that willing to defend, and that gives you that safety and a platform. Then you're talking about legs, that people who are willing to run, and then you have pace. And if you can put all that together, you have a chance. And it's probably something we're trying to put together with our own men's national team, but it's something that Eileen Gleeson has probably built a little bit better, that were, you know, more threatening in the final third, and we were willing to go, right, we can't soak up, but we can play probably for 10 minutes rather than, right, we have a chance on the break and then we go back to defend again, right? We might have a 10-minute spell where we're a little bit stronger in the game. I think it's really what Paul touched on, and his point I think is great, is that beating teams you're expected to beat and in and around you is brilliant, because you're showing that, look, we can step up to this, and we have a consistency here. Trying to go and take on the bigger teams, that'll come, but the more you go at them, and the more, like you said, the 2-1 loss to England, the more you go at them, the more you know how close you're getting to them, and that's an important thing to get as a team going forward.
Yeah, we'll really look forward to those playoff games, the semi-finals in October against Georgia, who are ranked 119th in the world, so definitely will be expected to come through that. But the final against either Wales or Slovakia would be a trickier affair for sure. Two decent teams, particularly Wales, who are coming for us. We'll just end by acknowledging the efforts of the Republic of Ireland women's under-19 team. They bowed out of the European Championships on Sunday. That they lost 2-0 to the Netherlands. They were beaten 2-1 by Germany in their previous group game, but in their opener they held the reigning champion Spain to a 0-0 draw, which was an absolutely brilliant result. So they can go home from that tournament in Lithuania with their heads held high. That was the first time that an Ireland team had made it to that under-19 Euro finals tournament since 2014, 10 years ago. And that squad produced Katie McCabe, Claire Shine, Megan Connolly, Chloe Mustaki, Savannah McCarthy, Hayley Nolan, all full internationals who served the country very well. So if this crop can turn out anything like that, it will be very, very welcome indeed. And we'll see how they progress in their careers over the next few years. We'll leave it there for this week. Thanks again to Graham Gartland and Paul Corry for joining me, and we'll be back next week with more. Thank you. Goodbye.